while all of this talk about the war in Ukraine, you might not have been paying attention to the fact that there's plenty of other wars happening around the world. Some of them have been happening for many, many years, including Yemen, where we, of course, have been actively involved, but we don't really talk about it. Well, now the United Nations is out this morning with a new warning about Yemen, and they're now calling it a chronic emergency because of millions, up to 17 million people there facing hunger as a result of this war.
In fact, the Council on Foreign Relations says that there are 20.7 million people who need humanitarian assistance at this point. Since the conflict began in 2015, there's been almost 111,000 people displaced and 4.2 million people internally displaced, and they are starving. There are no imports of food and supplies. Exactly what we're super worried about happening to Ukraine is in fact happening right now around the world. And so I think it's important to ask yourself, do I only care about Ukraine in my Twitter bio, right? Or do I care about conflicts everywhere? And where, is this a war du jour when this war has been going on between rebel forces and the Yemeni government, and supported by many governments around the world?
Yeah, and when we, of course, can still funnel in troops and we can funnel in drone strikes and everything else, again, we get to pick and choose. Like the Western media every night can lead their 6 o'clock newscasts with Ukraine, Putin, because we have this clear enemy.
Yeah.
Right? That's the thing. It's like written by Hollywood. We like a clear enemy, and Putin is your clear enemy, right?
Did you watch that Ukraine on Fire yet?
No, I haven't.
Oh, because that's exactly like they say. They take what the CIA and stuff do is they take somebody like Putin, who's a gray hat, he does some bad things or whatever, and they turn him into a black hat, like he is the devil, putting his face on Hitler and everything else. Like they take a guy that does have some bad qualities and just make him the worst thing you've ever heard of, and that's by design.
Oh, of course. Yes. We need an enemy, right? So that was the concern, right? When we pull out of Afghanistan, what are we going to do? What are we going to do now? What is the military industrial complex going to do? Putin. Wow. Putin. And now, of course, Xi Jinping. That's the next one, right? So President Biden is going to be meeting with Xi Jinping over rising tensions in China or in Taiwan, and going to call on Xi Jinping now to make sure that he is not backing Russia, which I love that we get to dictate that, right? We've been putting sanctions on China for years. We've been agitating China for years. And now Russia is leaning on China. They're forming a relationship, and we're going to tell China to stick with us instead of Russia? How does that work exactly? You know?
I think, you hit the nail on the head, right? Is that it's really complicated, the war in Yemen, because it's sort of a rebel uprising. There's not one person to blame it on. We're not that worried about it affecting our economy. And they're saying right now they need $4.3 billion. So the World Health Organization is like, oh, planet Earth, you're feeling generous to refugees? Look over here. We've got some. We've had some for now almost 8 years. It's time to take a look.
But we can send $14 billion to Ukraine in the form of weapons and other, but we can't send it to Yemen to help them
It does definitely hurt our economy, though, because we are the ones over there bombing in Yemen. We're helping the Saudis. We're funding them. We're sending them bombs.
But there is less exports into us.
To be fair, I think the only major world power that is not currently bombing Yemen is China, because Russia is bombing Yemen, Saudi Arabia is bombing Yemen, UK is bombing Yemen, we are bombing Yemen, Israel is bombing, everybody is bombing Yemen. So in all of that, I think the only country that is not currently actively attacking the Yemenis people is China.
You guys,
I mean, it's crazy. And to think
the way when you put it that way, I just want to quit all social contracts.
This is proxy wars, right? This is, again, so we can fight, we can fund the military industrial complex. We're basically fighting Russia now in Ukraine. We're fighting Russia in Yemen. We're fighting Russia. We're fighting China we're fighting these countries in other places around the world without actually fighting them in their own countries. And we can, this is when someone sent in our chat just a few minutes ago, sanctions are better than war. Again, we are at war. We are at war. When you send $14 billion to a country and you send Javelin missiles and you send rocket launchers and you send jets and you send anti-missile batteries, That's war. I don't care what you want to call it, because Congress hasn't called it a war since since Korea. So we don't call them wars. We just call them military incursions, and we just send as many pieces of weaponry as we possibly can.
Yes.
Well, and nobody also talks about Afghanistan and how that the serious stuff that's going on there right now that is 100% the United States' fault. Like
I mean, Afghanistan already had its 15 minutes of fame. Again,
Right.
like we spoke about earlier in the show, I was listening to some podcast this morning, and the hosts were worried that we would get Zelensky fatigue, right? Like, when are we going to stop being inspired by that guy and stop caring? This is a problem. Well, look over at Afghanistan, because Afghanistan had its 15 minutes of fame. We cared a little bit. We put some, like packages together on airplanes for Afghani refugees, but it's not over.
I don't think we're not at the fatigue level yet when European leaders are calling for Zelensky to get
When
the
will
Nobel Peace Prize.
Zelensky jump the shark, right?
Yeah, when's that going to happen? When there's like a
is the
Zelensky,
question.
when like little girls are doing Zelensky dances, like Zelensky do 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 do
The
do.
Zelensky Halloween costume, that's when you know it's over.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, geez. No, but
That's gonna come.
that would be cultural appropriation.
Yeah. All it is a green T-shirt. I could do it right now. So.
Yeah, with a little scruff.
But
That's easy.
I can't grow the beard.
That's easy.
You should have done that yesterday, because yesterday was St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, that's
it's
right.
true.
That's right.
If I may, because there are several people asking, like, why is this going on in Yemen to begin with? And it's like, this is how proxy wars work. And if I'm wrong on this, I mean, I'll point it out. But so you have like people that are unhappy with the Yemenis government. So Russia, Iran, they come in, they kind of back these rebels. Whether the rebels wanted to fight or not, you suddenly have these rebels that are backed by these major powers. So then the other major powers come in, they support the other side. That would be Saudi Arabia, the UK, the United States. And so then it's basically like it's a mini world war right in Yemen because of all of these. And so what would have just been sort of like a rebel uprising that would have been contained to Yemen, probably done in like a week or two, is escalated because there's all of these major military industrial complexes around the world. They're like, oh, we can make a lot of money on this. And so that's the thing that I think that's really why the US is so, like pissed at Putin, is because he broke the status quo of we need to keep these wars proxy and just sort of like just keep pumping all this money into it.
Yeah.
Whereas when he actively went after Ukraine, then it's like, oh, wait a minute. That's not how this works, because now what do we do with this money?
Yeah, we like to keep our hands clean. This is not how we fight.
And let's not forget that Yemen holds about 3 billion barrels of oil. So
Of course. So there you go. Like that, it follow the money, right? That's the concern, right? Who does this oil? Whose hands gets their whose hands get their hand? No, whose hands get their hands on oil? No, that doesn't make sense.
who gets their hands on the oil?
Who gets their hands on the oil, right? And so at the heart of this Yemen, you had this popular uprising. Was it like 2015? And so the people rose up against the pro-Saudi government at the time, right? And part of the Arab Spring, right? We want to stand by ourselves. And there were, of course, those in the Western media that said the group that rose up, they're pro-Iranian, right? So you can't have like a pro-Iranian group rising up in Yemen against a pro-Saudi group. So then that's where then suddenly the Saudis want to come in and stick their nose back in and say, no, we want to support this side. The United States wants to help the Saudis. We can't have a Iranian-backed government in Yemen, even though that's what the people want there, right? So then, of course, you have this, to Philip's point, this like mini World War III in Yemen. And right now, the World Food Program estimates that half of all the country's children under 5, about 2.3 million kids, are at risk of acute malnutrition. 400,000 at risk of dying right now. So many kids with like just bones sticking out of their legs, with their hip bones. You can see like every piece of their body. But let's all focus on Zelensky, guys. Let's just make sure we keep our eyes on the Western narrative and make sure that everyone keeps changing their Twitter bios and their their business logos, put Ukrainian flags all over them, but just ignoring all of these other issues, these main wars that the United States is sticking its neck into.
Yemeni refugees do not get the green light into Western countries in the same way that now the UK is saying, no questions asked, come on in, right? So we have to ask ourselves why. If we're choosing who to help, who are we choosing not to help?
Well, but if you watch the news coverage, you know this because, like, you know, those Europeans and the people in the Ukraine, I mean, they look just like us. So,
right.
You know,
Right, exactly.
They got to be let in because, like, you can't really tell. But those people are obviously not white, you know.
But of course, we don't give a rat's ass about these people, right? Because the top trending topics on most social media over the past few days has been daylight saving time, right? Look,
Well, I'm going to tell you what's trending.
Hold on a second. But look, I'm all for like getting rid of daylight saving time, but that just goes to show you where like Western priorities are. Like, so Western media will not cover these stories. You're not going to find Western media stories. Go to CNN, try to find stories about Yemen right now on the front page of CNN.com. You're not going to find it. But you will find like them talking about daylight saving time because that's a palatable story that we can all kind of swallow, right?
Well, okay. I mean, let's give them their fluff when they need some. And this is, I think Marco Rubio had said, like, look, we definitely have serious problems in the world, but if we could just get this one stupid thing out of our lives, then let's do it.
They're not sinking a bunch of pork in that one, are they?
Here, look at the front page of CNN.com right now. There's literally not one story that's not about Putin.
This conflict.
Every story on the front page of CNN.com right now is Putin.
Yes, I see this.
Okay. If you like this content, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Also, we have a membership program. For the price of a cup of coffee once a month, you can support independent journalism just by going to morninginvest.com/join.
You get access to exclusive videos, plus the ability to join and chat with us live. We really appreciate your subscription, and you are supporting independent journalism.